Oh, Lord. What a day. Just finishing up my final to-dos. Just had my last appointment. And good Lord, man. Like I said before, I'm tutoring, but I was watching this podcast, listening to this podcast. Man, I'm so tired, I can't even think. But listening to this podcast. And man, they're right. It was talking about just media and like the way people work, and kids are changing so fast. I'm tutoring, and it was a doozy. You know, like after a long day, I've had a long day, the kids have had a long day at school all day, they just got to do homework. And like kids have like an hour to 2.5 hours of homework every single day. It's absolutely insane. But I don't know, something's just not working. Like I feel bad for these kids because, you know, the families or the mom, I think the whole I don't know, maybe the mom's home or whatever, and you know, I'm trying to actually do the work, but I'm trying to make it look like I'm, you know, doing what I got to do in order to it's like any job. This is a job to me, you know, and you want to make yourself look astute. But man, it's so hard for kids to pay attention these days, and I don't know, like I feel like there needs to be some fundamental change in how we approach human beings in general, because like it's a long day at school, it's a long day at work, and these kids just can't handle sitting down at a desk in front of a piece of paper or a Chromebook, and there's like 15 tabs open and we're switching tabs. Like I'm getting exhausted just doing it, and my brain is like fully formed. But I was listening to this podcast, and they were just talking about how once you lock kids up in a room and make them sit down and do work, they start acting like animals. And I'm not comparing these kids to animals or anything, but it was just pulling teeth, getting them to do anything. And I'd be like, hey, you know, pull this up. And after like 4 tries on the fidget spinner, after like 6 different tabs open and close, after we start looking up the weather for no good reason, and I'm like doing two things at once, working with 2 people at once. It's like after 30 minutes, I feel like I've barely logged on to the program. You know, I've barely had them logged on to the platform in order to do the work, and it's like they're loud, and it's just wild, and it can be frustrating, but I have a lot of empathy because, man, it feels like more and more people these days are not built for the sit down, do your work, don't get up, grind. I mean, think about what we're asking young people to do now versus what we do as adults at a job. With my job, I have the unfortunate circumstance of having to make sure, you know, a room full of young people stay sane, which means I have to like be on the ball every single second of every single day. But for the rest of us, if you're working in corporate America or whatever, like, you know, you sit down, you check your email. By the way, it's golden hour. I feel like I'm looking fresh right now. I'm looking absolutely gorgeous. Let's put this visor up so I look absolutely incredible. Look at that. You sit down, you check your email, you get up, you get a cup of coffee, you say hi to Chris from accounting, you walk to the bathroom, you have a meeting, you come down, you sit down for the meeting, you get ready, you find out it's canceled, you get back up, you got to use the bathroom again, you had 4 cups of coffee today, you finally respond to the emails that you had to figure out what was going on with it, and you know, by the time you get pen to paper in the in the metaphorical sense, it's probably like 11:15 before you got any work done. But what we're expecting of these young people is like you sit down and at 8:30 in the morning, boom, you go and you go and you go. And yeah, you know, school can be fun, but you think about all the topics, like a lot of these kids aren't even really interested in it. But I feel like there's a fundamental issue just with like kids and their attention spans and their ability to do work. And maybe with just the line of work that I'm in and with my clientele, maybe it's tougher. But I don't know any kid that's like, man, I am just loving finding the relationship between consonant proportionality, between, you know, how many buckets a chicken feeds, you know, 5 people. But then, like, with what they're doing too is like everything's online. I mean, they're just watching a YouTube video. They're watching this guy. I don't even know who this guy is. But they're just watching this dude basically do homework himself on this white screen and like filling in bubbles. It's like, could you imagine sitting down at school and watching somebody take a quiz and then have to learn from that? It's ridiculous. It's insane. So then you have these kids who are just like trying to function. I mean, kids should be playing. There should be very little economy for tutoring, because I think kids should just be outside or just like drawing or freaking eating chips. I mean, as an adult, you got plenty of responsibilities. Why are we starting these kids off so early for the madness? It's like we're getting them ready. We're getting these kids ready for corporate life, baby. We're getting them ready to sit down, be quiet, start grinding, you know? So the system is interesting. It's crazy when you embed yourself within the system. You can see yourself being pulled into it, because, you know, you got to make your upper management happy. It's just like everything else. There's upper management, middle management. You're kind of like middle management in a way, because these kids sometimes they just become the means to the end. Like your performance, your test scores, you are the means to my job performance and job security. And a lot of people think like, oh yeah, you're in a union, you got, you know, and yeah, there is definitely job security, and there are major benefits to where you're at too. But man, like there's like, for a lot of teachers, like they have a lot of there's a lot of job insecurity. So these kids, or even just if you have your job, there's this kind of innate desire to keep up. It's like keeping up with the Joneses, but keeping up with the Mr. and Mrs. Joneses. You know, if your test scores are trash and another teacher's test scores are goated, you know, things start being questioned about you. So then these kids, it's like their reading level is your job performance, and your sense of self, your sense of efficacy, is that the right word? Your sense of efficacy as a teacher and a professional gets tied to how well these students are doing. So you start looking at them like, you know, cattle who, you know, are needing to yield the appropriate amount of, you know, product so that you can make yourself look good, and you get a nice little plaque from the school board that says, thank you so much for what you're doing, you're an amazing teacher, when in reality you're just working these kids to the bone. So it's a crazy system, but kids are kind of OP, man. Kids are OP. They're like, no, I'm not doing this. And they've kind of figured out how the system works, I think. And they kind of know, like, man, if I don't have to do any of this, like if I decide not to do I don't have to do any of this. If I just decide not to, like, what's going to happen to me? You just get pushed on to the next grade. You become someone else's problem. And they've figured it out, man. And I think people are just scrambling. Like, what are we supposed to do? But I have a heart and a desire to make sure, you know, the reason why I got an education is I want kids to have just the skills and abilities. I want to set them up with a nice tool chest to when they get to the professional life, they've got options. Because, you know, if you can't read, if you can't do basic math, if you don't know how the world works a little bit, you're in deep, deep trouble. Life's gonna hit you fast. So I want to give these kids the ability to be like, if they want to be a freaking TikToker or YouTuber or entrepreneur, whatever they want to be, they can. Or I don't care, like if they want to be pizza delivery, which is a great job. I love that job. Listen to a lot of great music, a lot of great Loveline episodes. You know, if they want to do that, they can approach that well. That's my whole line of thinking. I don't go into teaching to make sure kids fall in love with Harry Potter, because some kids think it's stupid. I was one of those kids. But man, it's just tough out there, people. It's just tough out there. And I think the problem is, the reason why teachers are so burnt out and people are so burnt out, and even you hear like, oh, Gen Z is not doing well in school. They don't know what's going on. Or not school, sorry, in the workforce. Gen Z's entering the workforce. You know, they're so lazy, they're ridiculous. I think what it might be is that they're OP. They've kind of learned the collective bargaining power they have. And they're like, nah, I'm not doing this. I'm not playing this game. But, you know, we got to have people who have a little bit of grit, but the task at hand versus what you're capable of doing in a day, it's hard to make it all happen. Because, I mean, truth be told, I'm not going to be working until 7:30 p.m. I'm not going to work for 12 hours. I can't do that. There's no shot. But man, we'll see how things pan out. I think we need some big fundamental changes just in the way that we approach the world, because I think it's antiquated, and the more technology advances, you know, a year from now is going to, you know, 15 years ago to be like a 6-year gap in the way that things change and things progress. You're just not going to keep up, and then, you know, what kind of problems are we going to have? We can blame it all on the kids, but I mean, we blame video games on violence, and like, if we're going to run down that route, then the problem's just going to get worse. So, man, it was tough, but I feel for the kids. It feels bad. I'm like dragging them along, because guess what? I got to get paid too. So, all right, engage with this content, please. Goodbye.